Airbnb, Couples Threesomes 21, FFM Threesome BDSM Erotica. Copyright 2020 by Connie Cuckquean. Narrated by Allison Okeefe. Airbnb, Couples Threesomes 21. When the lockdown lifted, I really wanted to get out there and enjoy the world. I'd been cooped up for so long that all I could think about was living life to the fullest once things got back to normal. I vowed never to pass up an opportunity again. You just never know if it's the last chance you'll get. It was under this new philosophy that the trip to Portugal had fallen into my lap. I'd entered a prize draw for a travel company on a whim and wound up actually winning. I couldn't believe it when I opened the letter. It wasn't quite the $50,000 prize that I'd hoped for, but unlimited flights to and around Europe was a pretty good second prize. I didn't hesitate to take advantage of it. I found someone to rent my apartment from me while I was gone, and that was that. A month after the envelope landed on my doormat, I was winging my way to Europe. My first port of call was Lisbon. I don't know why, but Portugal, and Europe on the whole, had always held an allure to me. The culture seemed completely different from what I was used to in the States, and that was something I was looking for more than anything else. I wanted it to feel as though I was in another country, and there was no greater proof of that than stepping off the plane and into an unusual-looking airport. "Taxi?" I asked after getting through customs. A swath of men in shirts descended, and it was up to me to choose one of them. "Rui São José," I said, causing many of the men to nod in agreement. "You know?" "I know," one of them said, in better English than the other. "Take me." As I walked away, the men dispersed. The idea of traveling alone was terrifying, and that experience hadn't exactly allayed my fears. My friends had recommended hotels to me, but I wanted my first night's sleep to be the best it could be. I didn't want to start my adventure all groggy and tired in a room full of people snoring. As such, I'd rented a room in someone's apartment, Mr. and Mrs. Allan, to be precise. Their profile on the website said they were an English couple who'd immigrated several years ago. They looked friendly in their pictures, but I guess they would. Nevertheless, I'd taken the gamble. "Rui São José?" I repeated again to the driver. "Yes," he said, and then he typed the address into his phone. "You know?" "I know," he said again, still typing. He didn't know, but he at least had the means of getting there. "How much?" He waved his hands as though the question wasn't important. Then he tapped the meter in the middle of the dash. "Okay," I said, and I sat back as he began the trip. I watched the quaint town approach in the distance and stared dreamily out of the window, wondering what the trip had in store for me. It felt as though each day would be a series of tests, but I was willing to meet them head on. I figured there was no better way of having an adventure than to thrust myself into it. The streets became thinner, and the buildings drew closer as we wound our way to the apartment of Mr. and Mrs. Allan. Rui São José was the kind of street I'd dreamt about when I imagined Portugal. Leafy plants wound out from the open windows of houses that were painted in ochre, terracotta, and olive green. Residents strolled down cobbled streets, and people talked and argued with loud, emotive gestures. "Here," the taxi driver said. I looked up at the yellow building that we'd stopped outside of. €20, he said, pointing to the meter. I had no idea if it was a good price or not, but right now I didn't really have a choice. I paid up, and he helped me with my luggage, even going so far as to show me how the intercom system worked at the apartment complex door. "Lucy?" said a voice on the other side. "Mr. Allan? I'm, here. We'll be right down." I turned to the taxi driver, who smiled and nodded before getting into his car and making off down the narrow road. The door of the apartment opened, and a cherry-looking 40-something man appeared. He wore a tight linen shirt and khaki shorts with open-toed sandals, thankfully sockless. If I didn't know he had a wife, I might have started flirting right then and there. But instead, I stood there,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?